Welcome back to NewOrleans.Football. We got a great show for you guys today. We're going to talk about who's under the most pressure to improve next season, ranking our players 1 through 9. What would be a good trade destination for Marshawn Lattimore? What kind of compensation should the Saints expect if they do shop him? We're going to get into some of the coaching staff changes and a whole lot more. Today's episode is presented by PJ's Coffee. If you need to get your day started, make sure you get it started with them. And if you need a new car, make sure you check out my guy, Matt Bowers. He's got the Ford dealership right behind us here on Veterans Boulevard. But he has dealerships all over the region, all kinds of different car brands, best prices, best customer care, best experience buying a car that you can find. We vouch for them. That's where we get all of our cars. All right, let's hit these ads. The NewOrleans.Football show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee. PJ's Coffee has some of the best drinks that you can find. They have locations all over the city. They have pastries and everything else you need to get your day started. So go check them out. Are you looking for the perfect engagement ring? Look no further than Friend & Company Fine Jewelers' new engagement salon. This new area houses a wide selection of engagement rings to choose from in all cuts, sizes, and colors. Their experienced staff offer 5-star customer care to help you find the perfect ring to express your love. Visit their new engagement salon today. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers, the perfect ring for the perfect moment and also for the perfect person. 7713 Maple Street between Adams and Burdett Street. 504-866-5433. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers. Check them out at friendandcompany.com. Hard Hide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. NewOrleans.Football is proud to be sponsored by Firehouse Subs. Make sure you check out their location on Veterans Boulevard. All right, let's get into the show. All right, let's get into our lead topic presented by Friend & Company Fine Jewelers, the official jewelers of the New Orleans Saints. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers has engagement rings. They have a beautiful engagement salon, prices starting from where you need them to start to where you want to finish. Big rings, the little rings, all of them are beautiful and elegant. Make sure you go and check them out. And while you're there, check out their fleur-de-lis earrings and necklace that you see on the screen right now. They are specially priced for our NOF audience. All right. Coming into this season, we just kind of went through some different rankings on the last show. This time, which players are under the most pressure to improve? We've talked about the coaches that got to get better, how DA's got to get better, how Klint Kubiak needs to help him get off to a fast start. But which players are under the most pressure to reach their relative peaks in 2024?
Well, I think we got to start with Derek Carr. I don't think he has the farthest to climb. Certainly not. Trevor Penning's going to be mentioned later on this list. So there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. But it's Carr because we have to decide, the Saints have to decide if he's the future of the quarterback position or not. Nothing's more important. Is he going to get his $40 million the next season, or is he going to be out there looking for work with a lot of other veterans? Is this team going to keep going for it, or are they going to rebuild? That all depends on if Klint Kubiak and him can mesh quickly, and if we can see the Derek Carr we saw over the last 6 games of last season. Look, we've mentioned this stat before, but I don't think we can say it enough. I don't think people appreciated how good he was. First 11 games last year, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Last 6 games, 15 TDs, 3 interceptions, 74.4 completion percentage, 117.2 passer rating. It was the best in the league other than Mason Rudolph, who only started 4 games. I mean, he was exceptional, and I want to see that continue.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. I think he's number 1 on this list. I mean, they're going to go how he goes. And if he's solid, they're going to be solid all season long. So, yeah, he's got to come in. He's got to hit the ground rolling. He's got to mesh with Klint Kubiak. I don't think anything's more important than getting him to where he needs to be. And I think, given where they're at, I think all their moves should be geared toward trying to accentuate him and make his talent better, just because this is the path they're taking. There isn't an alternate B path. And every time we talk about this, there's someone in the comments like, you know, but it's there isn't a B path. We have to analyze it through the path they're taking. They are so dug in on this that at this point, where you're at, you got to try to make it work. And that's what they're going to do. So I think that should be what they do, because they've already chosen their path. So discussing should they go left or right, that's almost immaterial at this point.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a scenario where the current decision makers, well, Mickey Loomis will be around, but like Dennis Allen in particular, and even Klint Kubiak, because if Dennis Allen gets fired, Klint Kubiak doesn't get to stay. They need to make Derek Carr work, because any plan that involves starting over, cutting Carr, eating salary cap space, drafting a new quarterback, that happens with the next regime.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now maybe there's the situation at quarterback where someone falls you at 14 and you have to take them. But
course.
I don't think that's going to be what they have targeted on their thing. All right, going to the next guy on the list, my number one after Derek Carr, I think it's Alvin Kamara. And I think that just for the team to be at their best, and this isn't saying that like Alvin needs to, be in the Penning category. Like,
he just has a lot of weight on his shoulders.
Yeah, he has to be at his absolute best for them to be at their absolute best. And the way this offense is built is that it is predicated on running. It's almost designed to hide the quarterback a little bit and make things easier for him. And everything's built off the run game. And when a team is running well out of the Shanahan system, everything else works a little bit better. So I think for them to be at their absolute best, he's got to be there right now. His numbers last year weren't terrible. 3.9 yards per carry was a little bit low, but the per game stuff, adding in everything, was really good. Remember, he was suspended at the start of the season, so I think he had a career low in rushing yards, but the per game stuff was very solid. But I think it just has to be a little bit better per touch, and that's kind of a systemic thing, not just him. I think everybody has to be better in the run game. But look, there is some individualized pressure on him because he's 29. Going into next year, that cap number goes crazy.
We're going to talk about that more later.
We're going to get to it.
Basically in the final year of his deal.
He has to prove that, hey, like, I'm still at the top of my game to get that next contract from the Saints or even from another team. So I think there's a lot riding on him individually this season.
Yep, absolutely. My third one is somebody, the very definition of there's pressure on this person is Jawan Johnson. He has to perform now. Like, he was an undrafted rookie who was a great developmental story, and each year he kept building on it, and expectations kept getting higher. This last year was the first year he went backwards. He went from 42 catches, 508 yards, 7 touchdowns in 2022 to 37, 368, 4. Less in every category in 2023 when we thought it was going to be his breakout year. Looked like he had a great rhythm with Derek Carr all offseason long. Now, he had a calf injury in the middle of the season that messed things up, but it was also the coaching, the plan for him, his own performance, everything. I mean, he talked openly late in the year about how Dennis Allen kind of called him out and challenged him to be better. And it just wasn't the year anyone expected. And now this is a very much a prove it year for him. He got paid. He got a second contract, kind of a tweener contract. But if he's going to stick around and get that next deal, he's going to have to deliver more on his potential this year.
Yeah, I think it's kind of guaranteed for next year, $5.5 million, and I think it's all guaranteed. But yeah, I mean, look, he's got to be better than he was down to start the season. It didn't come together until the end of the year. There were some injuries early on, but I think the expectations on him relative to how he performed, I mean, it was pretty underwhelming overall. Like, I think everybody was expecting like the big breakout, and it just never came.
Me first and foremost. Like, I did a fantasy column at the beginning of the year. He was my headliner and my lead to it. He was like my one fantasy recommendation for this team was, wait till the end of your draft and let him be your starter. And for all those teams that missed the fantasy playoffs, if they followed my advice, I apologize.
Well, he gave him the boost in the playoffs because that's when he came to life. So maybe he won somebody a title off of your recommendation. But yeah, I mean, again, though, I think this offense should be suitable for him. I think it should help him get there a little bit. And those numbers just have to be better. They have to be stronger. All right, going on to the next guy on the list. I got Chris Olave here. And again, great season. Inconsistent a little bit at spots, admittedly, from him.
Yeah.
But I think with them, I think we can say likely, almost certainly moving on from Mike Thomas. I think just the water runs down a little bit. I think that puts pressure on him to be just that absolute superstar caliber player that I think everybody expects him to be, that we know he can be. The numbers are right there. He's knocking on it. If he becomes a little bit more consistent, I think he should get there. But it's got to be someone that you can rely on every single game just to kind of be at that peak performance. And there was a couple too many 28-yard games last year where I don't necessarily think it was all his fault, but he lost his way a little bit and still put up the numbers. But just lock in and be that consistent, pro, and be the superstar that everybody knows you can be.
Yeah, different definitions for this, obviously, and his is the class of its own. He needs to be the best player on the team.
Yes.
He's not going anywhere. If they cut 30 players and fire the coaches, he's going to be part of the 2025 team no matter what. But they need him to not just be a top 5 player on this team. They probably need him to be the number 1 or 2 best player on this team this year to be special.
Yeah, I agree with that totally.
All right, my number 5, Pete Werner. I guess I don't know which category he falls in. He's somewhere between Jawan Johnson and Chris Olave. I think he needs to be a top 5 player on this team and to prove it. And he's going to be playing for his next contract this year. He's another guy, just like Jawan Johnson, we were so high on coming into last year. And he was good. He was solid. He started 16 games. He had 93 tackles. He had his first career interception. He had his first career half sack. He wore the green dot for a couple games when Demario Davis was an injury question mark. He did a good job in that role. And any team wants Pete Werner on their team. But in 2022, the first 8 games of that season, he had 71 tackles and 2 forced fumbles. He got hurt, and it slowed his growth. But it looked like he had 150 tackle potential. It looked like he had like Pro Bowl, second team All Pro potential, and he did not take that step forward. He went from, oh, could this guy be really special, to, oh, this guy's solid. And I think there's a lot of pressure on him to prove he's special this year. And I think the team needs young special players because a lot of their special players are getting older.
Yeah, again, just contextualizing this, like he should be the guy that's kind of like making it look like it's okay for Demario to get old at some point, even though Demario refuses to get old. But he should be that successor. Second round pick at linebacker. He has the talent. We've seen the flashes. Like that's kind of the level he needs to elevate to. But yeah, I thought last year was kind of just flat for him a little bit. But I thought that was kind of the problem with the team across the board, is that like a lot of these young players kind of just stayed flat. And it kind of felt like, and I'm not speaking about Werner or anybody else, but it just kind of felt like some of them weren't doing everything they could have done to get to that next level. So I think people just need to go out. They need to prepare, be locked in, kind of, do all that stuff. There was an issue with people watching film away from the facility and all that. And it's just kind of, I feel like that tier of young players. And again, I don't know if Werner's one of them or not. Like the stuff we've seen him studying film in the locker room when he was hurt.
He's kind of a film hound.
Yeah. So, but I just think overall that whole group of players that's supposed to be that next young core should be like leveling up
him
a little bit.
And I'm trying to remember that draft class. It's what, Peyton Turner, Pete Werner, Paulson Adebo. Peyton Turner has the 5th-year option, but Pete Werner going into last year of his deal, Paulson Adebo going into last year of his deal. Those are guys the Saints want to be second contract players, and they need to prove they're worth it this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next one on the list for me, I'm going to Ryan Ramczyk, and he's just got to be healthy. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on him to be healthy. There's a lot of pressure on his career, I think, for him to be healthy. He just needs to be that guy, and they need him to be that guy. If you're trying to go out and replace 2 tackles this offseason, I think you're kind of in trouble a little bit. And maybe you bring back Andrus Peat, and he can be one of them if Ramczyk's hurt or whatever, but they're kind of at that point right now where they got to see it with him. I think it's a very much like, on the teeter-totter a little bit, and it could go either way. He expects to be back. He expects to be healthy next season, but he's got to prove it and he's got to show it. And it would help them significantly if they have one more good year out of him, hopefully more. But if they have at least one more good year out of him, you're only trying to replace one tackle, and then a year from now, you're trying to replace the other one. But if he's good, I think their offensive line's in much better shape than it looks on paper right now.
I had a really open conversation with him late last season where he was genuine, honest. The knee injury didn't become a major issue until this year because he had found a way to kind of manage it, and he felt pretty good about the plan. This year, he no longer feels good about the plan. So he knows this is the first time I think he started thinking, all right, my career's on the line. I got to figure out how this knee is not going to cut my career short. And so a lot of that is happening now. It's happening this offseason, coming up with a plan that's going to work for him. This is a whole different kind of pressure. This is how much career do I have left? And hopefully he figures that out for the Saints' sake, for his sake.
And going on to the next one, you had Trevor Penning.
Trevor Penning, the opposite tackle. He needs to get his career started. I mean, he's probably number 1 on this list, depending on your definition of him. I mean, they invested so much in him, not just a first-round pick, but depending on how you viewed their trade to get 2 first-round picks this year, they traded extra to get this pick. And they don't have a left tackle for the future right now. They don't have a left guard for the future right now. It'd be nice if he was one or the other. And he's gone nowhere. He started the first 5 games last year, got benched, then came back in and played the 6th game. After that, I think he played 13 total snaps on offense the rest of the year. Yeah, 13 offensive snaps over the last 11 games. He's lost, and they need to find him. We're going to talk about the Rick Dennison hire. They have 2 of just like the OG all-time offensive line coaches coming in on Klint Kubiak's staff. He's going to get every opportunity to have someone try to figure it out for him. But the limit is his career could be over after this season, or his career with the Saints could be over after this season, or he could finally start delivering on first-round potential. Nobody is a bigger curiosity on this whole roster this year, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at it right now, and I think he might be like, and I hate to talk about something like this, but it's not injury. It's not anything else. It's just can't get on the field. I feel like he might be the most disappointing pick, most frustrating pick in recent history. I mean, I'm kind of looking at, you kind of got to be at a certain level there. You got to be an early pick to kind of qualify as that. I think you kind of got to go back to like Stanley Jean-Baptiste to kind of find someone that's even in that realm. Maybe Kakaha was a second-round pick. He didn't really.
Stephon Anthony, he played more.
Yeah, Kakaha had injuries. Stephon Anthony's kind of, in there too. I mean, it's kind of those guys. It's probably Anthony, since Anthony's probably the last one, but it's hugely disappointing. Like, he should be able to get on the field and block someone. Like, he has everything. He has all the traits to be like elite. It's just he can't put it together. The physical ability's there, the athleticism's there. Like, the idea of him is fantastic. When you see it, you look at paper, it's just it hasn't clicked. And that jump from college to the pros for him, yeah, I mean, it was a wide leap, but I mean, this has taken a lot longer than expected.
To be fair, injury is a huge part of it. I mean, he missed most of his rookie year with an injury and most of his second off season with an injury. So that is that slowed the development. But this last year, he was healthy and they chose not to play him.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, that's fair. I mean, it took him off the field a little bit, but like, I don't know that he would have been on the field anyhow. Like, it's just he can't put it together. So. Yeah, definitely some speed bumps there with the injuries. I mean, that's fair. That's fair context. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot on him. I don't know if I classify like the pressure on him with the season. If they're going into the season with him as a teetering point, as a pressure point player,
then they've screwed up.
They've screwed up badly.
Yeah, this is totally different from Olave. It's totally different from Derek Carr,
pressure on
Alvin
Penning.
Kamara. Like, the team needs those guys. The pressure is on him. He doesn't have a career if it doesn't work for him this year.
Absolutely. All right, my next one, I'm going Alante Taylor. And reason I put him on here, I mean, Lattimore, we think, is on the trade block. If they do trade him, he's probably going to be the guy that has to step up on the outside and just blast that over and make him look smart, or at least allow him to get rid of it. I don't know if there's a looking smart when you trade Marshon Lattimore, but allowing it just to kind of move on a little bit and be okay. If they do make that trade, it better work out better than Brandon Cooks was that's how they got Stephon Anthony. Yeah, they traded Cooks and then drafted. Is that right?
No. Cooks was Ramczyk.
Cooks was Ramczyk.
Stephon Anthony was the Jimmy Graham trade, but they also got Max Unger in it.
Yeah, that's it. So it needs to work out better than that if they do that again. But yeah, if he goes, he needs to be the guy. But if Lattimore stays, I think there's a lot on him to step up in the slot and just kind of put it all together. And, he has tremendous athletic ability. He could be one of the better players on the team. His athletic gifts are kind of unmatched by a lot of people. It's just if he's staying on the inside, he needs to make it all click.
Pressure's
together.
on him either way.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if they do trade Lattimore, do they re-sign Isaac Yiadom and keep him outside and keep Taylor in the slot? I'm very curious to see what direction they would go. But if they keep Lattimore, or if they decide to bring back like a Yiadom instead of trying to find another slot guy, it's up to him to make it work in the slot. The fallback option won't be there for him. And so what would I do? If I traded Lattimore, I would probably move Taylor outside and then invest in like Kenny Moore from the Colts as a free agent. And he's one of the best slot corners in the league. I think you can get a top-notch slot guy for cheaper, just the nature of that position. So I would probably lean toward that. But knowing how well Yiadom played, it's hard not to think they wouldn't bring him back. But yeah, I think for Taylor, he's probably hoping for a scenario that puts him outside. I think that's where he's more comfortable, and I think that's where he fits better. It's so interesting, those numbers, the 2 interceptions. 0 career interceptions until like week 16 of last year, and he got benched for his poor performance in LA.
Twice.
Comes back the next week, gets his first career interception. The next week, he gets benched again and comes back in the lineup and gets his second career interception. So great response to adversity, but just so much tumult with him.
Yeah, he needs to flatten it out a little bit, and I think he would on the outside a little bit. But again, if you're moving him from the inside to the outside, there's probably more growing pains to come. But the upside on the outside is so much higher. If I'm the GM or I'm the coach setting up my team this offseason, if I'm either one of those guys in those conversations, he's absolutely on the outside. I would probably try to bring back Yiadom, have him as a backup, as my depth player.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing the same thing you're doing. I'm going to the market to get my slot because, A, it's cheaper. It is just an easier position to replace. And if you get him on the outside, I mean, if you're trading Lattimore, it has to be with the vision that Alante Taylor can be your outside corner. And if he's not, I'm not making that trade. It has to be for a reason. It's sort of like, like Belichick, when he cut Kozar, he didn't have a backup. When he benches Bledsoe, he did have a backup plan. Like, you need to have the backup plan if you're pushing out the guy that's in that position. And if it isn't him and they don't have a plan, massive mistake, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's a massive mistake to trade Lattimore no matter what, unless the relationship is just so fractured that you have no other
We're gonna
choice.
get to that.
I'm not doing it for strategy. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to make room for Alante
Absolutely,
Taylor.
absolutely.
The last one on my list is Peyton Turner, another obvious one in the Trevor Penning mold. The only difference is every time we see glimpses of Peyton Turner, it looks like he's starting to figure it out on the field, but he can't stay healthy. Hopefully this is the year he stays healthy. If not, I mean, they're not going to give him the 5th-year option. And then he'll go into free agency next year. And I mean, he needs to prove that he can play in this league and put together 2 straight months. And it's really hard to be consistent when you can't stay on the field and you can't get that consistent work. The good thing is he came back in week 18 last year, played, a fine game, whatever. But the importance is he is now going to go into the offseason program and have the entire offseason, which is huge for a guy like him.
Yeah, it's interesting because even if they get a guy, like they need depth, they need it bad. They need him. They need him to perform well. All right, going into our next topic, the Saints added another staff member, Rick Dennison. He was on the original Mike Shanahan, Gary Kubiak tree, coached in Denver. He is as OG to this as anybody remaining in the league. I think he's kind of a super interesting guy. They're going to bring him in to coach alongside John Benton. We think that Dennison might possibly be like part of the run game planning a little bit.
I don't know
he's going to
exactly
be
what their titles be. Maybe senior
advisory role,
analyst, whatever it is. Yeah,
it's an interesting hire though. Like they're going to have a lot of guys that have a lot of offensive line experience. Dennison obviously has been around forever. Benton has experience in the system. He's been around forever. You have Jari Evans, who's going to be a Hall of Famer within the next couple of years. All the resources are there for this line to be incredibly well coached. They got a lot of guys that need to step up. What do you think just kind of about the DNA of the staff so far and the guys that we've seen?
You're always kind of torn when you look at an older coach and you're like, he did this, and this in the 90s, so he's going to be great. Like, I mean, look, they just let go of Doug Marrone, who's been a successful head coach in college in the NFL, and they decided to move on from him. So you like the idea of fresh ideas versus – but what's so interesting to me about Rick Dennison and John Benton, the offensive line coach that they're hiring, is this leaves no doubt about the offense that they're going to install here and the run game they're going to install. Like, Rick Dennison wasn't just a branch from the Mike Shanahan, Gary Kubiak tree. He was on Mike Shanahan's staff the entire 18 years that he was in Denver, from his original staff all the way through. And then when Mike Shanahan retired, he goes to Kubiak's staff with the Texans, and he's on that staff. And then he follows Kubiak to the Broncos. He won all those Super Bowls with Shanahan, and he's the offensive coordinator. He's the offensive line coach. He's the run game coordinator. Then he did it with Klint and Gary again with the Vikings on Mike Zimmer's staff. Like, if you've installed the outside zone, wide zone, whether it's the Alex Gibbs version, the Mike Shanahan version, whatever you're going to call it, the one that had Arian Foster, the one that had all these, like he coached it, like he taught it, he coached it, he helped originate it. And John Benton has been at a lot of those staffs too. So that is what a young offensive coordinator in Klint Kubiak, who is going into his 3rd year as a play caller, he's still in his 30s, he is having the run game taught by the guys who invented it, basically.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. Like, if you're on an outside zone, there's really only one way to block it, and it was the same in 92 as it is in 2024. So, I mean, I like, if you want like a guy with the eyes on it to make sure you're doing it right and isn't necessarily down there every day teaching the fundamentals and everything, like that oversight is unbelievable. Like, that's the guy you want around. He was supposed to be Klint Kubiak's offensive line coach in 2021. Then he didn't get the vaccine, kind of got pushed aside, advised from a distance. But a lot of people think that was maybe one of the things that kind of set that season. Like they were solid overall. Like they were 12th and kind of like everything across the board. But that was one of the things that created adversity for them. And yeah, Matthew Collier was on here talking about how much it kind of set back their season, that they lost him unexpectedly. So I think that was a huge thing. But if you are running this and you have all these people around, like, it's impossible kind of to know who's going to be a good position coach on paper. Like, you just kind of read the resume, but everybody fits. It's not like, we couldn't get this guy, so we're going to try to put this piece in there. Like, all the guys they're bringing in, when you read the resume, you're like, oh, like, this guy has ties. He fits here. He understands that he's going to be a part of it. So I like the idea of his staff. I really do.
Yep, I do too. Completely agree.
All right. Since our last show, the news came out the Saints are expected to finalize their agreement to bring training camp on the road to the UC-Irvine campus in Orange County, just south of Los Angeles. It'll be the first time that they've went on the road for camp since being at the Greenbrier from 2014 to 2016. I don't know. What do we think about this?
I like the idea of going to a place where they're going to get good work done. I mean, obviously you can't sell training camp to a Saints fan base when the last time they did it under these perfect conditions in West Virginia, the team went 7-9 3 years in a row, and the owner said, "We're not getting our money's worth out of it. Come back home." But look, there's a lot of successful teams that train away. There's a lot of successful teams that train at home. The one thing I do is I like the location they picked. They're going to have perfect weather. They're going to have perfect grass fields. They're going to have perfect facilities available to them. And in a year where we talk about nothing is more important than installation, they're never going to have a practice cut short because the guys are getting overheated and they have to bring the IVs out or they have to move practice indoors again. So they're going to get in all the work they possibly need to get. I never know for sure if going away and the team bonding, who can say? Who can say for sure? But I know they're going to a place where they're going to get good work in.
Yeah, I know they're going to go away. They're going to say they bonded, all that stuff. It was a story every year in West Virginia. It made them so tight and all that stuff. The thing about like installation and all that stuff, I hadn't considered that. Like when you're bringing in a new system, just kind of having everybody locked in, and there's no level of like, I got to do this for my family. Like they're in a hotel, but like still people are around or whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, I think there is an element of focus that's probably good. Even like for what we do, you kind of go away and it's like, all right, I can work 16 hours today and like I don't have to do anything else. But you know, the one thing I'd be remiss if I didn't point out, like I hate it for the fans. Though. Like the fans want to see their team. They do want to see them. I mean, this cafeteria,
that can't be the only reason. It can't be. Like I'm sure they've decided a win-win. Like we've always been on the fence about whether to go out of town. Well, since they're doing the construction, let's go out of town this year. You could find a way to fix the cafeteria around your training camp schedule if you really, really didn't want to go. They have to want to go.
The practicality of this, I hate it for the fans, but then on the other side, like I'm standing out there every day. I see how it's affecting the players. Like, it's absurdly hot now. It's hot. It's, last year was the hottest year on record. Next year is going to be the hottest year on record. It's just kind of a thing every single year. Like it gets dangerous at a certain point. So it does suck being out there. Like, I don't know that, I never believed in the whole, like, when people would complain about West Virginia, like, oh, they should be in the heat, Junction Boys, all this stuff. Like, I think that's kind of stupid. I know DA likes the heat, though, so he's talked about it. I don't know where I fall on the whole thing. Like, it's going to be like, are they good next year or not? But, like, I do hate it for the fans. I think it's better when they're here for the fans.
It's so funny. Like, so history. They went to Millsaps, 06, 07, 08. Like, they built the team out of nowhere. They were there for 5 weeks, and the conditions were horrible, and they practiced outdoors every day, and it toughened them up, and they went to the NFC Championship game, and I think Saints fans still remember the modern-day Junction Boys. That worked. They came home in 09 and won the Super Bowl. They went to West Virginia for 3 years. They were 7-9. They came home in 17 and had that great 17 season, which was one of the best seasons. So you can't say, this means this is going to happen. You just can't.
Yeah, I mean, the reason they were good in 17 is because they had the best draft in history. It had nothing to do with about where they practice. Here's the thing. Whatever they do is good if they win, and if they lose, it's the dumbest thing in the world, and people are just going to stand behind that. So, all right. We're going to be back just in a minute. We got some stuff about how the cap affects running back position. We're going to talk about Lattimore's market, where he might end up if they decide to trade him. We got your Martin's questions of the day, 2 of them, and we'll get into all of that and more right after this very, very short break.
Are you tired of renting and ready to own your dream home? Contact Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union, your trusted source for home loans. Our competitive rates and flexible terms can help make your home ownership dreams a reality. If you're a first-time home buyer or looking to refinance, our experienced lenders are here to help. Our online application process allows you to apply on your schedule. It's quick, easy, and convenient. Visit us online at jeffersonfinancial.org to learn more. Federally insured by NCUA, Equal Housing Lender.
Martin Wine and Spirits is home to a selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and much, much more. They are family owned and operated since 1946 and specialize in wine, spirits, gourmet food, gift baskets, catering, and tasting events. They have many locations, so they're never too far away. You can check them out in Metairie, New Orleans, Mandeville, and Baton Rouge, or if it's more convenient, you can always shop online. Whether you're a wine novice or a seasoned collector, you'll enjoy the Martin Wine and Spirit experience. Welcome back to our new studio on Veterans Memorial Boulevard, right next door to Matt Bauer's Ford dealership. If you need a new car, make sure you check them out and grab a PJ's Coffee on your way there. They are our presenting sponsor. All right, time for our money segment presented by Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union. NFL analyst Marcus Mosher shared an interesting graphic during the Super Bowl about how it's been 15 years now since a Super Bowl champ had a big-time running back that came with a big investment. The list, interestingly enough, started out with the Saints and Pierre Thomas in 2009. Now, obviously, the 49ers were one play away from winning the Super Bowl with Christian McCaffrey, the Offensive Player of the Year. His cap hit is significant for them. So that kind of, a couple plays, overtime, coin flip, something different happens. This whole trend gets shattered. Yeah. He's the outlier on it, but he'd still be a significant outlier on it. So it is kind of interesting. Just what do we think about just what this says and where the Saints are at with their cap hit with Alvin Kamara and what it could mean for his future?
I mean, we just have, unfortunately, overwhelming evidence that it's not a smart position to invest in. Yeah. And the fact that they age so quickly, too. I mean, has any team regretted? Have the Cowboys regretted moving on from Zeke Elliott? Did the Giants hold on to Saquon Barkley too long? They're probably not going to reinvest in him. Unfortunately, McCaffrey is the outlier for a number of reasons on a list like that. But that doesn't mean they aren't special. I mean, the Tennessee Titans were the number 1 seed a couple years ago, and Derrick Henry was their entire team, basically. Yeah. Those guys are still special. The Falcons were not wrong to draft Bijan Robinson. The Lions were not wrong to draft Jahmyr Gibbs. The Saints were not wrong to draft Alvin Kamara, and he's been we talk about him as the MVP of the team or one of the top 2 or 3 players on the team every year since he's been here. So it's not wrong. It's just it's a tough way to spend your money. And this year, Alvin Kamara is due $11.8 million, and I think they should pay it. I think they're going to pay it. Next year, he's due $25 million, but that's like a fake contract year that they put in there. It basically means this is the last year of his contract unless they decide to re-sign him. But yeah, I don't know if that value changes. Do you think that changes with the new offensive system at all? I mean, we're talking about Mike Shannon famously, especially in fantasy circles, is the guy who had undrafted rookie Alfred Morris and then Gary Kubiak had an undrafted rookie Arian Foster, and just plug a guy in and he can run the system.
All they did is made Hall of Famers.
Is Alvin Kamara still special enough to be the exception to rules like that? Or is that, no, especially if you have this system and guys like Rick Dennison and John Benton coaching it, go ahead and get the cheapest run. Give me a Kendre Miller every year. I don't know. I'm a little torn. Alvin makes me think differently, but if I had a cold analytical heart, I'd say I would never pay for a running back.
Well, here's the thing. They're going to restructure his $10.2 million. He's 7.7% of the cap right now, so he's going to fall into this trend. He's going to be somewhere below that Marshawn Lynch bar, below probably the Ray Rice bar.
Leonard Fournette is the one name on here. He got a little money when he 1.2%
though when they won it.
That might have been phony money though. What I mean?
In that season, that's where they had it. So they're going to get Alvin to that, but then what that does is next year, he's due $25 million next year in the final year of that deal. When they do that, look, I mean, if you cut him right now, if you don't touch it when you cut him next year, you save $19 million against the cap if you decide this is the last year of his contract. But you're going to restructure that $10 million, so then when he goes, you're going to have a $19 million dead money hit. So
Alvin Kamara's dead money could be on this chart if they win the Super Bowl.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is, and it would exceed all these guys. So I mean, that's kind of where they're at with it, but. I mean, there's overwhelming evidence, like you said, that if you're going to spend $19 million, it's better to spend it in your left tackle, in your right tackle, than it is in your running back. The argument for Alvin is that he gives you a little bit of everything. So if they're using him dynamically, like we just saw with Christian McCaffrey, I think it changes up that value a little bit. But if you got LeGarrette Blount or Sony Michel or Leonard Fournette, just kind of run only guys. It is absurd to have anything invested in them because it is just really all about the blocking. And when you are in this type of system that they're going to be in, if you block well, you're going to make these guys look better than they are. But yeah, I think Alvin is probably a little bit in that outlier area. But I mean, there's nothing that we can say here, and it's not insulting to anybody to say that paying a 29, 30-year-old running back big money is just historically not smart. Yeah. And if it's smart at 30, it's probably not going to be smart at 31. If you beat the odds at 31, it's just at some point it just becomes a situation where you don't want to be the team giving a guy his third contract at that position. Yeah. It just isn't something you should do. The thing with him is I think he's probably going to have a solid season. The numbers are going to look good. He's going to get paid again. But it's a dangerous spot to be. And I think that you seriously have to consider it and, moving on and just taking that hit. But they'll probably get in a situation where if he has a good season, are they re-signing him just to delay that $19 million, and then does it become like a Cam Jordan type situation where you've restructured it for so long that you're like, well, like we can still get something out of him. And then that big ass hit is something that you're considering along with it. And those are some of the decisions we've seen recently with them, with their cap management, where it's kind of like some of this stuff is like, wow, like you got to be able to make the shrewd decision at some point and just say, all right, like we're going to pay $20 million and we might be 2 years early on this, but like we're just not going to be 2 years too late on it. And that's kind of, some of the stuff we've seen.
Do you consider that at all right now if you're the Saints? I mean, that's a decision they could make before the league year in March if they decide we're not giving him another $12 million in cash that's going on our books for the future this year. I mean, do you consider moving on from him now, or do you get this one more year out of him?
I get one more out of him. More out of him. But I mean, I think next year, like that $19 million is just like
really tough.
Yeah, it's just, we're eating it and we're going to do something else. And we drafted Kendrick Miller for a reason. And look, I think Alvin's fantastic. I think he's somebody that takes care of his body so well. I wrote a story before the season just about his new process, all the stuff he's doing, the science behind it. It's crazy. And I've said it a million times. I don't see him aging the way I saw like Zeke and Cook age. And at some point it might just hit. You're always one hit away at that position, but like that leg drive, the strength and all that stuff is still there. But it's just, you got to look at the numbers and you kind of got to make a hard decision at some point. And that might be something that you just gotta take it on the chin at some point.
It's funny, we were talking about Aaron Foster and Alfred Morris. I'm looking at the list. C.J. Anderson when Gary Kubiak and Rick Dennison won the Super Bowl with the Broncos. C.J. Anderson was their running back. Yet another example. But then again, Kyle Shanahan went out and traded for Christian McCaffrey. When you have special players, you make special exceptions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know it's gonna be a hard decision. Another hard decision coming up. Marshon Lattimore, we touched on it a little bit. It's a topic that's going to just kind of hang over the whole offseason until there's some indication one way or another. Got the combine coming up in 2 weeks. Maybe we'll get a little bit of insight on which way the wind's blowing with that. They should probably get some insight on which way the wind's blowing with that, because it's just a place where conversations happen and people figure out their direction a little bit. But realistically, when you're looking at this, what can the team get in return? B, should they still be open to trading him? After hitting what looks like such a home run on the offensive side of the ball with the coaching staff, like, should they be more optimistic, more, let's hold off and see what happens. Let's stay strong. Let's not get weak anywhere. Can they fix what seems to be broken with Marshon? Should they try to fix it? What do you do if you're the Saints?
I mean, I got to get in Marshon's head. I got to see if he was intrigued by Kubiak, if a little time away from the team and the fact that all 32 teams are 0-0 right now changes his outlook. Like, because I don't know how much of this he's demanding, how much of this is they just feel like he's sort of been a little checked out, but he, isn't demanding a trade. Like, I don't know how broken the relationship is in the first place, even though we've only gotten bits and pieces on that, not a concrete no. He's like, we knew CJ Gardner-Johnson, we knew that was broken and they had to trade him for whatever they could get. They were basically cutting him. I hope it's not that broken with Marshon, because the best thing for this team is Marshon says, no, I'm totally in. Kind of like Michael Thomas last year when we thought he was going to be gone, and then he got totally on board with Derek Carr, had a wonderful offseason with this team until it went south. But like, I hope that's what happens with Marshon Lattimore. I'm not trading him for any strategy reasons. I'm not trying to get out of his contract. I'm not trying to get ahead of his aging curve. He's still only 27. So I'm only trading him if something is broken that can't be repaired. Now, what can they get for him? The good news is I think they can get a late first-round pick for him. Top 50 pick for sure. I think he's worth that. I think he's young enough that he is the missing piece for a contending team picking in the late part of round one. If this is a third-round pick or fourth-round pick situation, then I am just absolutely not even entertaining the idea.
Yeah, Marshon's interesting to me, like, as a human, and I kind of hate to like sit here and try to act like we know everything about him, but just from being around him from a distance, he strikes me as a person that I think once you lose the trust is probably gone. But I think he's not a super emotional person, so I think there's probably a way to coexist with him without maybe the whole like inner circle type stuff being part of it, where he can be in a work environment, go to work, do his thing, and just be an employee and probably be fine if you find a way to kind of just smooth over some of the stuff that has caused tension behind the scenes. Like, yeah, I don't think it's a totally toxic CJ type thing, but I think there's some stuff sprinkled in like, if you drink too much of that, I think the water's maybe, you're sniffing it.
You have to boil it.
To see if there's something in there. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's been a tense situation for 2 years now. And, can it be fixed? I don't know. I'm not any of these people, but he does seem like a person that, you could probably get it to a place where it's just like, all right, make your money, do your job, do you, and it's probably fine. And I don't know though. I mean, I don't feel like it's a thing where they have to trade him, but it does seem like they both agree that maybe this is enough. Or let's take a separation and see if the divorce is coming. It's kind of what the contract was. But who can they? Who I went through, kind of just cursory glances, rosters, kind of trying to make a list of teams that I think could make sense. Yeah. And I got 7 of them, all picking 18 or later. I think Cincinnati could convince themselves to trade for a cornerback. They got pick 18, the Rams. I think they're probably looking at it, okay, we hit the ground running. We get everything going that we had going later in the year. They probably look at it like they're right behind San Fran.
The Rams have draft picks? I thought they traded all of them
I think
already.
They got the 19th pick, unless I'm mistaken.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, so I think they're a team that could try to convince themselves to go all in, and that's kind of in their DNA anyhow. They've traded for cornerbacks over and over. Go get another one. I don't know if the Steelers do it, but they could use one. They're picking 20th. They feel so far away. They probably wouldn't. The Eagles at 22 could use a cornerback. Throw Lattimore with Slay. Like, you're right back in the mix. They're always aggressive. If I'm the Saints and Howie calls, I'm just probably letting that go to voicemail, though.
Yeah, you can't make a trade with Howie Roseman again.
The Lions, although
you just said it.
Although the CJ trade was fine. It was a draft pick trade.
I know.
The fans hate the CJ trade, but like that was. They got a pick for a guy they were cutting. The Lions at 29. That's the one.
That's the one.
Ravens.
And, I mean, when we talk about it, I think that's what we should be talking about. 29, right?
Fits everything. Yeah, it makes sense. System, knows Aaron Glenn, likes Aaron Glenn, all that stuff. Ravens at 30. That's one that I think would make a lot of sense. 49ers at 32. They could use a cornerback. I mean, they're absolutely going to probably be all in.
You skipped over the Chiefs at 31 because they had 2 corners in the Super Bowl just play out of their minds.
Well, like everything I've seen, like on Draft Knees, like they had a corner, and I'm like, do they? Like, I don't know. Like, to my last exposure to them, they look great. But I think there's options here, and I think this is where you fall. Like, it's got to be one of these teams. I'd probably take the Steelers off there, but like, it has to be one of these teams, I think, picking in that bottom quadrant of the draft. And they're the teams that are going to be able to say, like, hey.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We could go further, and we could all of a sudden be talking about the 40th pick or the 50th pick, but then you're not talking about the teams that are, right there 1 year away. Like, I don't think the teams that are in more of a rebuilding mode are maybe making that trade. So it has to be 29 to me. I don't want it to be pick 58 or pick 60. I mean, maybe it would come to that, but I'm way less I'm not enthusiastic about it anyway. Way less enthusiastic about it if it's like the 60th pick in the draft.
Yeah, if it's that, hey man, you're under contract. We got to figure this out. Yeah. Like, that's what I'm doing. All right. Moving on to our Martin's questions of the day. Martin's is home to a wide selection of handpicked, barrel select bourbon whiskeys and so much more. Martin's, so much more than just wine. Our first one from Brian. Could y'all see the Saints trading down in this year's draft? I'll answer this in one word. No. They'd never do it. It's not going to happen.
Look, good question, Brian, because if it was ever going to happen, it should happen now. They have the 14th pick, they have the 45th pick, and then not again until the comp picks, which are either going to come at the end of round 4 or they get into round 5. So, yes, it screams, and this is a team, the oldest roster in the league. They need to rebuild through the draft with young talent. If ever a team should trade down and accumulate an extra pick or two, it's the Saints this year. It's not in their DNA.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, it just doesn't happen. It's not how they go about business. So yeah, I wrote on my thing here, nope, never going to happen, never will. Don't see it coming. I mean, it's just not what they do. I mean, would it be the first time? Yeah, it'd be like the first time ever under
I think
first round.
First round, yeah.
I don't think they've ever done it. No.
Under Mickey, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they've ever traded down ever.
They have, like 2007 was like the last time or something. It's like some insane
yeah.
number. Right. There were some, look, the 2006, they had incredibly shrewd trade downs and they added players like Hollis Thomas and Jeff Fain in the process of trading down that built that 2006 roster. And for some reason, they never decided to try that again.
All right, going to our next one. Do you guys think with Klint Kubiak as OC that they go after some of his former players in free agency, like Jennings or Irv Smith from his Minnesota days? I mean, I think you always look for people that fit a system. There's always DNA in it. Anytime you see someone go there, you see the coaches follow. There's always a couple players. I think Jennings.
Look at what Sean Payton just did. Yeah. Everybody who ever played for him that you're like, oh yeah, that guy used to be on the Saints. Yeah.
Jennings, I think, is a restricted free agent. So I mean, if they let him go, he's someone that makes sense. But yeah, I think we'll probably see them. There's guys that fit a system, and you want guys that fit a system, and I think there's value to getting them because they can help spread the system, teach the system. be kind of an extension of the coaching staff a little bit. So if there's a few of those guys out there, like, yeah, definitely go get them.
I love the question. I love the concept. I had trouble finding the right players that fit. Irv Smith was an interesting mention. He went back, Logan went back and found somebody from a couple years ago. Irv Smith is Mr. Untapped Potential. Was he a first-round pick, I think? Had a major injury. Had 5 TDs in 2020, but it just never happened for him in Minnesota. Didn't happen for him when he signed with the Bengals last year. I don't know how excited I'd be about that. But Jawan Jennings, look, you mentioned the other day, and you were right. He bursts on the scene during the Super Bowl, and so maybe he'll get a bigger contract than he deserves. He only had 19 catches for 265 yards and 1 touchdown last year. But I started researching him a little more. Big slot. The touchdown pass that he caught in the Super Bowl was a slant where he then bodied the guy and shoved him off him and scored a touchdown. You did your film study and you found a play where they threw to Jawan Jennings around the 12-yard line and he got rid of the guy and he ran into the end zone. 6'2" or 6'3", 212 pounds. He had 5 touchdowns a couple years ago, 416 yards the year after that. Big slot. Contested catch ability. I kind of like Jawan Jennings. And then we mentioned before Sam Darnold. They just worked with Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold would be crazy to leave the 49ers. It's such a good situation. Also, maybe an opportunity if Brock Purdy ever looks like the Mr. Irrelevant. And then along the Irv Smith lines, for a year in Denver, he coached guard Dalton Risner, who was a first-round talent kind of pedigree, who's bounced around a little bit. Maybe that's a guy he likes. But I had trouble finding this is the guy that I love.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of named them all, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'll look for some guys out there that fit the system, and we'll probably see some ties to that San Francisco offense in more ways than just the coaching staff. That's going to do it for today's show. We'll be back on Monday with everything you need, and keep it locked to NewOrleans.Football.